Hello and good evening. Tonight we have another interesting topic. It is about one sector of our economy which has so much prospect. It is a sector that perhaps would have solved all the problems we have, from jobs to the transformation of the rural sector to opportunities for the average person to create wealth, and then to the larger economy in terms of how Ghana can benefit. But over the years, we have not been able to take advantage of best models elsewhere. And that is where our problems are. So what I have done today is to take us back to some verses in the Bible. It is very much loaded. And these three verses I've selected simplifies what we have done, where we have failed, and what perhaps we can do to change what we have seen so far to the best. So you will see jobs, you will see rural development, poverty reduction, health, and sustainability. And then, of course, I will walk you through these three Bible verses. The first one, Ecclesiastes chapter 11, verse 4. It says, farmers who wait for perfect weather never plant. If they watch every cloud, they never harvest. And then you look at Proverbs chapter 20, verse 4. It says, those too lazy to plow in the right season will have no food at the harvest. And Proverbs chapter 21, verse 5 says, good planning and hard work lead to prosperity, but hasty shortcuts lead to poverty. This evening, our topic is food, agriculture, and rural development. Many of us agree that over the years, in fact, from the days of the Bible, man was living on what we plow or what we grow from the earth. And that has transformed us over the years from agrarian to where we are now. So the poor farmer in your village, all of us come from villages. The poor man out there continues to grow the food we buy at cheaper cost because we take advantage of their disadvantage and dictate the prices for them. And unfortunately, those whose sweat has kept us surviving are the poorest in our part of the world. In the conversation today, you will understand why we have shortchanged the average Ghanaian farmer and why many say agriculture is one lucrative business, but it never appears to be very attractive. So we want to encourage people to go into that sector, and nobody seems to be interested. Tonight, my guest is an agronomist. He's a fellow of policy think tank Solidaire Governance Forum. He's Michael Harry Yamson. I'll tell you more about his profile. Very exciting. Michael, welcome.
Thank you very much.
This afternoon, I was privileged to listen to you when you were doing your presentation. Actually, the presentation was on an interesting topic. Remodeling financing for agribusiness and agro-processing, reviving rural economies in Ghana. Yes. So I tapped into it and I chose this topic. Now, if you look back at what opportunities we have had after the creation of a country called Ghana and how slow we have marched in that sector, what do you think are some reflections as a preamble for this conversation?
Well, I would say that we began very boldly. We began with a great conviction that we could tap into all the potential of agriculture and build around it an industrial base for Ghana, provide through it jobs for every young person in Ghana. And I think if you go back to some of the budget statements from Dr. Nkrumah's government. He talked about a Ghana where nobody wants for work. Nobody wants for work. And so from the very north of the country all the way to the south, you saw strategic thinking and integrated execution of an agricultural policy, of an agric-led industrialization policy. I think that fell into a little bit of, into some amount of difficulty as the whole economy went south after, shall I say, the 63, 64 era. And then you saw a major pickup from 71.
Okay.
And that ended up in the Operation Feed Yourself, where we said we will grow what we eat and we eat what we grow. And when you look at the trajectory of Ghana's agriculture and its contribution to GDP, I think that period between, shall I say, 64, 63, all the way up to about 1978, represents the period where agriculture continuously grew to a point where it represented about 63% of GDP. And it wasn't 63% of GDP because everything was collapsing. It was 63% of GDP because, indeed, we were able to build the industries that took the produce from the farms and converted them into locally manufactured consumer products, locally manufactured industrial products. So we saw a lot of improvement. And then, the 83 period came, everything went back south. But I think what we lost at that point was this idea that we needed to think about agriculture in bold terms as the engine by which we would turn our economy around. And we shifted very quickly into believing that services would be the basis on which we would build our economy. And so, we very much glorified the accent of services. But at the end of the day, if you are not growing, if you are not converting what you grow into products and services at the base of your economy, it's like building, to quote from the Bible as well, it's like building a house on sand and not on rock. And so we have seen it happen. We have teeming unemployment today, and there's really no reason for it. It is because we don't have a vibrant agriculture and agro processing sector.
So we will go into the value chain, which obviously will address some of these concerns you have raised, because the topic you put as your presentation in your lecture today was remodeling finance for agribusiness and agro-processing, reviving rural economies in Ghana.
Yes.
And so it is obvious that it will form part of our conversation. But for those who have joined us, this is Ideas Exchange on TV XYZ. We bring this to you every Wednesday, 8 to 9 p.m. My guest is Michael Yamson. Michael Yamson, let me tell you a little about him. He's an experienced management consultant. In fact, he's an agronomist. He's an investor, advisor, brand, and channel developer with a proven track record, a successful entrepreneurship in multicultural corporate environment and SME businesses, providing high-level strategic leadership to consistently improve business performance. Mr. Yamson, if you don't know, I want to share with you now, and if you know, then I'm just reminding you that he has been involved in developing strategies for brands, beginning his career with Unilever as brands manager, then rising through the ranks to eventually head marketing of Unilever Francophone West Africa. Unilever is exciting because Unilever is also tapping into the agric industry. Now, let's walk into the issues. We often hear, as I said in the preamble, that farming is a lucrative business, and in spite of the abundance of land and all the things we have, it appears as if it is not attractive enough to the average Ghanaian youth. What could be the reason?
Well, it fails to be attractive on a number of levels. Number one, agriculture is resource intensive. And because of that, it is all the countries that have been successful in using agriculture to catalyze their growth have understood that the state has a role to play. It has a role to play in making sure that all the infrastructure that one needs, whether it is science and technology, whether it is equipment, whether it is finance, whether it is extension services, are all available to farmers, and are available in such a manner that they are able to attract young people to either go into agriculture or stay in agriculture. Now, Ghana made a commitment, and I said it today. Ghana made a commitment in 2003 that we would effectively spend 10% of our budget resources making sure that agriculture works. And that means investing in infrastructure, in general infrastructure, roads, electricity, communications. It also means investing in, it also means spending money to facilitate the work that banks and insurance companies do to support agriculture, as well as in making sure that the research and development that agriculture requires, the extension services are all in place. Now, what we have done is that we have been unable to spend at those levels. Sometimes we touch 5%, then we come to 3%, then we go to 4%, and we have not been able to consistently meet the mark of 10%. Indeed, this very month, the Peasant Farmers Association have called on government and said, look, keep your word. You promised to spend 10% of the budget on agriculture. And just imagine what would happen if that amount of investment goes into agriculture and agro-processing. We have set up and launched the 1D1F, for example. That is probably the biggest program allied to the Planting for Food and Jobs. But the linkages are so weak. And because the linkages are weak, even those factories that are agro-processors continue to struggle finding raw material. I have worked with one such enterprise. They cannot get enough citrus plant to run their facility. So it is good to have a view to say that we want to invest in agriculture and we want to do processing. But once you say that, then you must put your money where your mouth is. And that is where we have not done well, and currently we are really, really failing to live up to expectation. Let me digress. The other part of the responsibility that government must play in order to make sure that, like you said, young people want to get into agriculture simply has to do with the fact that when a person goes into agriculture, it's a very varied area. And therefore, you cannot begin to create literally one-size-fits-all programs generally for farmers. A farmer who is in the maize value chain has very different requirements from the farmer who decides to go, for example, into cashew. So we must be able to have very targeted interventions for them and make sure that at every point in time, the policy players are able to bring together the banks, the microfinance institutions, the insurers, the commercial, the big commercial banks, to create just the right product for each value chain. What we have seen in Ghana, however, is very big one-size-fits-all sorts of programs. And then you end up with a situation where part of it, some of it works for some of them. And you never get that focused, consolidated push that says that I'm going to drive this particular agri-product, and I'm going to make sure that from farm to plate, there is an integrated thinking and executional strategy behind it.
Okay, so of course we'll be moving into the aspect of this conversation, which is remodeling agric financing. And then we'll just dovetail into the area of rural economies or making it more attractive into specifics. But for those who have joined us, I'm speaking to Michael Harry-Yamson. He's an agronomist and, of course, a fellow of a governance think tank, Solidaire Forum. And this evening, we are looking at an interesting topic, and we have decided to put it together as food, agriculture, and rural development. I'll show some videos in the course of this conversation, which is just a reflection of Ghana's agriculture sector. Just a few people seem to be doing well, but largely we still go the old way, where we use much more of human-centered form of agriculture than using mechanized approach. And you go to advanced countries, they are even adding technology, which will also be part of this conversation. Now, if you look at it carefully, you realize that financing agriculture comes in various forms. You are looking at farm tracks are put under roads, which will make it easy for the transportation of goods and services with reference to the sector. You also want to look at financing into the sector itself, i.e. agriculture, planting or rearing of livestock. And then you also want to look at the area of industry, which will look at tapping into produce. Now, look at these sectors carefully. Look at what we have done in the past. There's been attempts. So you have Agri-Development Bank, you have African Development Bank, you have ADRA, for example. All these over the years seem to have made some attempt at addressing investment. Why has it been failing?
Pardon me. Each one of these programs that you refer to and each of the partners clearly have a very well-intentioned and I think well-designed purpose. The issue, though, from everything that I have seen is the fact that the work that is being done tends to be uncoordinated. So you have one project that is targeting 1 or 2 or 4, 5 crops in somewhere in the north. But when those farmers have been successful in growing, what happens? We create more product.
Okay. So you were coughing along the line. We have ex-natural mineral water. They are our sponsors, of course. But for those who have joined us, we are looking at food, agriculture, and rural development. And so the videos or the pictures you can see on the screen is just a reflection of what we are attempting to do. But largely, we don't do much of this. So you see the typical time of irrigating a farm, which obviously cannot give us good yield. And as you saw from the presentation I made with reference to Bible verses, we are largely dependent on rain-fed agriculture, but you were advancing a point.
Yes, thank you very much. So the issue for like, as I was saying, is that there's a disjoint. One of the things that I commented about Planting for Food and Jobs was that whilst we have focused very much on production, the linkages that convert that production to value-added products just don't exist. You can look at the 5 programs under Planting for Food and Jobs. You have the crop program itself, you have rearing, you have export, you have mechanization, and there's a 5th one that always escapes me. None of these includes a linkage into agro-processing. Then you have a completely separate project called 1D1F, where there is no obligation on the factory to have an integrated value chain back into local agriculture, right? Then the other part of it also, when you have all these smallholder farmers, each crying for support, and the government attempting to support them, but they never consolidating so that they become attractive to financiers, what you end up with is a situation where the development partners spend a lot of money trying to create capacity in the farmers. But because we continue to behave as individual smallholder farmers, and I'm not by any means saying that we should go the communist route and take over all lands, but it is possible for individual smallholder farmers to come together and form some sort of a cooperative or a loose association and then begin to approach financial institutions on that basis. But not just as producers, but as part of an integrated system that says that our produce has an off-taker. And that is what has been missing. The produce of farmers don't have ready off-takers in the industrial sector. So the only off-takers become the market queens. And the result of that is that you have a glut, they come in, they bid low, they take the product away. The farmer has probably lost at the point of the sale. And the only people who make money are those who buy and sell. Those who have the capacity to actually take the produce, convert it into something more valuable in the domestic economy, employing people and creating a basis for us to export to West Africa, Africa, and the rest of the world, don't get a chance. So this is where I'm saying that we need financing that allows an agro-processor, we knowing when the harvest comes, to say, we will back you to also go into that market and buy competitively, convert it and sell.
Okay, so stop there, Mr. Michael Yamson. I see a chicken and egg situation here, and I'll give you 3 scenarios. In your presentation, you make reference to industry inhibitors. I'll go there. But let's look at one example. What is best? Establish the factories and go into large-scale agro or agribusiness where you know that the ready market is there, or we go the Commander Sugar factory type where you have the factory which will be the basket to receive, let's say, the produce. So there's guarantee, because we can't get money to do all at the same time.
You see, the question is, what is large scale? Large scale can be a single huge farm, and that's a large commercial farm. Or large scale can be an aggregation of many smallholder farms. As long as there is discipline in the way they work together with each other and with the off-taker who is the agro-processor. As long as there's discipline, that aggregation of smallholders can have the same effect as one single large farm. So for me, the important issue always is that, first of all, let us understand that we have a limitation, which is our own land tenure system. That's going to take quite a while if we want to dismantle it before we progress. But whilst it is still with us, it is possible to learn from the lessons that allow us to pull smallholder farmers together, tie them to agro-processors, provide the right kind of, then be able to provide the right kind of financing to them. It should be possible for us to say that because there's an off-taker, we know that you will have money. We know that there's a contract that will benefit all the tomato farmers in this district or all the garden egg farmers in this district. And because of that off-taker arrangement, we, the bank, we, the microfinance, we, the lending institution, have confidence to lend to your cooperative, to on-lend to you. Or if it is in the area of equipment, we have the confidence to lend to the off-taker so that he provides the equipment, the service to the farmers, and then the farmers pay for the service. They don't have to own a tractor. A 1-acre farmer does not need a tractor. But an aggregation of 1-acre farmers that gives you 1,000 acres will require several tractors. But that can be done creatively. So I always go back to the fact of we need to create a new architecture around which we can bring the smallholder farmers together, tie them up to agro-processors, and use that relationship to present a more appealing offer to the finance sector to say, put money into agriculture.
Haven't we known these problems over the years? I've put together some few details that I was able to chance on when I was doing some research. I've packaged it as challenges in the agri sector. I'll share it on the screen and read along a few of them so that we can appreciate in reality what appears to be what we know, but we have always been failing to address them. So you just see on the screen some of these challenges that I put together, and you'd realize that many of the things that Michael is talking about appears to be what we know, but implementation of fine policies we have put together have always been the challenge. For example, I went to the website of the Agric Development Bank, and this is what I saw. What it has put together is basically saying that in Ghana's agricultural sector, there are a lot of things that they can do to support. So you see development and agency interventions, and it says there are many development programs in the agricultural sector, and a fair amount of money is invested by different NGOs and development partners in order to enhance productivity and grow capacity of farmers. This is mostly done by training programs, blah, blah, blah. It goes on. And you see the challenges in the agri sector in Ghana, poor financial support. This appears to be one key area. So access to financing is vital for the growth of the agricultural sector in Ghana, mainly for working capital such as acquiring inputs, seedlings, farm fertilizer, and for hiring labor, blah, blah, blah. It goes on. And it goes down there to talk about issues about savings and loan, microfinance institution, poor transportation and storage facilities, lack of information and data, inadequate agriculture and extension services, low mechanization, poor adoption to technology, and so on. While the conversation is ongoing, this will be shared on the screen for a while, and then we come back to the studio. Now, we know it. What are we failing to do? You are talking about remodeling agri business and agro process and reviving the rural economies.
Well, you see, I read, I read things like this, and I always say to myself that at the end of the day, why is it that a bank, a financial institution, has no qualms putting money in the hands of someone who is an importer? Because they have found ways to present themselves as low-risk ventures. Agriculture has not yet been helped to project a low-risk opportunity, a lower-risk opportunity, or a low-risk opportunity to banks.
Should Agriculture Development Bank, I'm asking this question, sorry to cut you, but I'm raising it to fit into this conversation so that you can expand it further. Agric Development Bank was established for a purpose. The policy direction and what went into the framework to design how it operates should have been addressing the issue of farms not being attractive, but it being a booster to grow the industry.
But you see, if you walk into a bank as a smallholder farmer and someone says, bring a credit bureau report, how many farmers have a credit report? If I walk into a bank as a small farmer and someone says to me that I should bring 3 years audited accounts, which smallholder farmer has this? So you walk into a commercial bank, and these are the sort of things that are standard terms for a loan. They are completely mismatched to the capacity of a smallholder farmer or the, what is reasonable. So our banks themselves have the wrong tools when it comes to agriculture. And we need to think afresh. Look, you go into, today I talked about a program that was run in Rwanda, Ethiopia, Burkina Faso, and Ethiopia, Rwanda, Burkina Faso. There's one other country, 4 countries. What did they do? They said, microfinance institutions, they focus on microfinance institutions because they are the readily available financial institutions in rural areas. They need an appropriate way to assess risk in agriculture. So we will help you to develop the right tool to assess risk in agriculture. That means that the commercial bank that is sitting in the capital does not necessarily have to present itself in a rural area in order to do business with people in agriculture. But it needs the right partner that understands how to operate in agriculture in a rural area and understands the profile of the clients that it is going to, to deal with. When you ask a farmer to come and deal with a commercial bank that is headquartered in Accra, I promise you, how they see risk, how they evaluate risk, is completely different from the reality on the ground. For the farmer, risk is something entirely different. For the farmer, risk is, I will work hard, I will grow the product, but who will buy it for me? What is missing is the off-taker for the farmer. But we haven't created a system that guarantees the farmer the off-taker. Because the minute the farmer is guaranteed an off-taker, he's holding a contract. And that contract serves a purpose when he approaches a bank.
Many have said, let's think as Africans and always be prejudiced to influence how we march forward. I made reference earlier to one aspect of your presentation. And before I talk about that aspect, Mr. Michael Yamson is a fellow of Governance Forum, or governance think tank, Solidaire Governance Forum. Solidaire Governance Forum is one of the new think tanks, and today there was a presentation basically on the agri sector. They called it remodeling agro business, agro processing, and how it can help to revive rural economies in Ghana. And this conversation is about how best we can look at solving the problems we know exist. And so in your presentation, you talk about industry exhibitors. Inhibitors. I didn't understand it well when you did the presentation, but I came across this notion that there seems to be a perception that the industrialized world would always not help us to improve on what exists in our world, so we can always depend on them. So we import much from them, and we are creating opportunities, jobs, etc. for them. And the things we can do, we are not able to develop it. Either we are not thinking, or they are just manipulating us. Is that what the industry inhibitors reflect?
Okay. So one of the biggest inhibitors is risk. And I think we've just had the conversation about risk, so I'll park that. The other inhibitor that I talked about, as you've alluded, is the structure of global agriculture, which is based on subsidies. It is not that the farmer in Europe is more productive than you, but what it is that they have access to European Union subsidies. It's not that the American farmer is a better farmer than our farmer here, but they have access to US government subsidies. Not only do they have access to subsidies, they have access to all the support infrastructure delivered at very high quality. And that is what we are lacking. So you're a farmer, you produce, and let's say that the crop that you produce is okra. How do you store your okra when you harvest?
What I saw in my village is we dry it.
You dry it.
Just that.
And that's all that there is. So you see, the infrastructure for many of the agricultural products that we grow and harvest in this country is simply not there. The technology to allow you to store or convert your okra, your garden egg, your tomato, your pepper, your onion, just is not there. And because these things are not there, the person who is sitting in Europe can grow their tomato, can it, and bring it here. They've already enjoyed subsidies when they produce. They enjoy subsidies when they export. And then they land it here, sell it at a cheap price, and collect all their subsidies to make up their income. We are here. We have been told by the World Bank, cut all subsidies because you cannot afford it. So I say in my paper that, fine, assuming that we cannot afford subsidies, it still does not mean that we cannot find the money, because we find the money to import rice. So if you are going to say that I will levy you when you will bring in that agricultural produce to use it to support insurance for the farmer, because insurance is expensive. Somebody's got to pay for it. So if you're going to import, I will take from you to support insurance for the farmer, so that the farmer is more attractive.
While you continue your conversation, I'll share some graphs on the screen, and you go ahead, and people will have an appreciation of some of our industrial crops and how far or how best we seem to be doing, but reflects nothing.
Or not doing.
But you can go ahead, sir.
Well, okay. So we have to find ways to support. So on the one hand, there's a bit about if we are going to import, then let's find a way to tax that import of.
So now, if you look at what I have shared on the screen, you would see that we have the agriculture contribution to GDP and then employment per sector. And so you would notice that we have about 20%, we have 40%, and then
20% contribution to GDP.
The 40% reflects services, industry, 34%, and then we have agriculture, which is about 20%.
Yes.
Then if you look at the employment sector, the figures are there. Then if you look at the graph, you see the top performing non-traditional exports, and you see on the column, you see, for example, cashew nuts. We are doing about $370 million. If you look at the graph well, if you look at banana, for example, and we don't seem to be doing well on areas where we seem to be consuming much rice, cuttlefish, and squid. We have yams. You see pineapples. You see the others moving along. They're not doing well at all.
No, you see, these are our exports. Now, you can just imagine how the hurdle that one must climb to grow rice in Ghana and export it. When you have the likes of Vietnam, Thailand, China growing rice, subsidized rice, it is an adventure that I would not hazard, unless, of course, we have put in the measures that allow our rice farmer to be competitive globally. So, I'm not surprised to see that chart. I'm not surprised to see that our exports of yams or whatever, as good as they are low, because it goes back to the point I made. How do you preserve? How do you extend the life? How do you find new consumer products based on those agricultural products that allow us to actually export to the rest of the world and do so with products that have a decent shelf life, just even to have a decent shelf life? Everything that we export, we still export it in its raw state.
Now, Israel seems to be doing so much well in the agri sector. If you look at Israel, you look at Lebanon, you look at Palestine, you look at all those countries in the Middle East, they're doing so well in agriculture.
Yes, but
they have helped us so much into knowledge, sharing knowledge. And I will tell you why this question seems to be quite interesting for this conversation, because you see that there's one part of the world where they don't have the land, and then we are living in another part of the world where everything is available for us to grow and boost our agri sector, yet we seem to be failing. But I want you to take a breather. I will just share with you some interesting facts about Ghana as far as our industrial crops are concerned. Just listen and read what I'm about to share. So there are lots of them. I'm sure before we wrap up, if you have time, we'll share a lot more with you. So we have so much just virtually lying fallow. Now, when you read through, some appear to have become attractive today because there was need for it. What could be the reason?
Well, I mean, very clearly, and I'll pick one example, share. The text said share has been around as long as cocoa, and that is true. Cocoa had focus, share did not have focus. But also, share never had any proper linkages back into agro-processing in Ghana. Even today, what has made share a global blockbuster agricultural product is the fact that multinationals based in Europe and North America have decided to put it into their soaps and their creams and their moisturizers and whatever it is. When we had access to share, it was something that we looked down upon. Foreign companies have now found
so our research institutions didn't
I don't
know
blame
this.
the research institution because I don't think that that is where the gap is. I think the gap is markets. We have not created markets around our product. Now, see, I mean, you talked about my background. So we would take a product like share and say, so what can we do with share? First of all, what must you do to make sure that you can get it in a manner that is sustainable, in the right quality? And that is all the issues we talked about: finance, de-risking, cooperatives, linking into agro-processors, going to the banks, etc., etc. But once you have it, the question is, who is going to add value to your share? And then the next step of work comes. How do you make sure that the agro-processors are resourced?
Are we marketing our agri sector enough?
It's not, even before that. You see, I talked about a point and I want to emphasize. There's a missing issue of patient capital for agriculture, which we don't have. There's a lot of short-term facilities and products out there. Agriculture and agro-processing require medium to long-term patient money.
Watch this effort by the Ghana Investment Promotion Center. Just watch it.
Ghana, West Africa's second largest economy, home to the largest man-made lake in the world. With 26 rivers and innumerable streams crisscrossing the country, Ghana has 5 distinct agroecological zones, which are defined by climate, natural vegetation, and soil conditions. The major strengths of the agricultural sector include a diversity of commodities, well-endowed drainage basin, a well-established agricultural research system, and relative proximity to the European market. Agricultural land is estimated at 13.5 million hectares, of which only about 50% is currently under cultivation. Irrigation covers 3.6% of the total area under cultivation. The agricultural sector consists of 4 key subsectors: crops, livestock, forestry and logging, and fishing. The crop subsector accounts for about 76.5% of the sector's contribution to GDP. The sector is predominantly made up of smallholder farms managing less than 2 hectares. However, there are a few large farms and plantations, particularly for cocoa, rubber, oil palm, coconut, and to a lesser extent rice, maize and fruits. There was a general increase in production of major staple crops in 2018. The Planting for Food and Jobs program contributed to the increase of the production figures in the year 2018. Ghana wants to be known not just as a premium cocoa producer, but also as the best chocolate maker, adding value along the cocoa value chain with strategic targeted investments. Ghana wants to mechanize farming across the savannah, developing irrigation systems for all year-round production, with an aim to improve processing, developing improved packaging, and transporting quickly to reach external markets.
So this picked on just 1 or 2 products, but it was trying to paint a picture about a certain country called Ghana, which is ready to boost the agricultural sector. Are we getting there?
You see, the point that I want us to pick up from this video is, again, what I have said. The linkages. The linkages are not there. You are seeing individual farms with all their systems sending it out. You don't see the story of linkages. You don't see the story of local value addition. And that is the worrying part. If you ask me how much of our cocoa we add value to in Ghana, you said you saw in the film, we want to be the best chocolate maker. You will have to tell me whether that number impresses you or does not impress you.
Not at
all. Okay. You saw the bananas. In what state do they go out? Because they are not eaten in that state. It goes out, and a lot of value is then added to our bananas before they are sold. So you will go to a store somewhere in Europe and find that you are buying produce from Ghana at 8 times, 9 times, 10 times the price that it sells for in Ghana. But just like with our cocoa, the global market is worth 110 billion, but the producer's value is less than 4.5 billion. What happens in between?
What is South Africa, which is part of our world, doing differently? You find much of the processed food on the market from South Africa, for example.
South Africa, the difference with South Africa is that there's value addition in the domestic market. That is the bottom line. So if we don't cross that bridge where we say, look, we will not just ensure that we can produce, but we will ensure that we can add value to what we produce domestically and grow a sustainable market domestically, and then build on top of that an export market, then we are constantly going to be appealing for someone else to come and invest in our economy. No country wants to hand over its agricultural sector to foreigners.
Now, in your presentation today, you made reference to one area, underdeveloped agri-insurance market. So Solidem made a very good presentation through you as a fellow, and insurance is a problem. Can insurance address the problem of the suspicion from the banking sector and their hesitation in terms of financing agriculture?
Insurance helps a great deal. It is important because it at least gives the bank some confidence that my money will not disappear. It also gives the farmer some confidence that says that if I do everything right and something goes wrong, there's a pool that will sustain me. A farmer in the European Union enjoys this. He knows that the European Union is there to support him if something catastrophic goes wrong. There's a subsidy system that ensures that if he does all the right things, he may not turn a profit, but the subsidy will take him over the bar from red into the black. So that is number one. But number two, he also knows that if something goes wrong with the climate, there are products out there that have been subsidized for him to buy to also give him cover. This is what our farmer does not have. Now, our farmer also tends to be a smallholder farmer. Okay. So what is important, as I said, is that our smallholder farmers need to be brought together so that they become a larger unit, being a cooperative or some association of a sort, so that they can buy these insurance products. There are now wonderful products being developed, and there are good products in plan. But the important thing is somebody needs to finance those products, and somebody needs to make them affordable for the farmer. And that somebody, in my view, is us thinking creatively about how we put money into agriculture. I talked about agri-bonds, for example, because the only product out there surely cannot be treasury bills. If it is important for us, then we should be able to say, we will take this money, we will reward you in the same way, but we will direct it to agriculture. And when you buy a bond, you've bought a bundled product. That is part loan, part insurance. The farmer then that takes the loan component also knows that in taking the loan, he has also bought insurance. So you are then carrying the finance and the loan cover through the system. But always saying that when I give you this help as a farmer, I expect you to be part of some sort of a cooperative. I expect you to be that your cooperative will be linked to an agro-processor. Then I know that in giving you this help, you will produce, and when you produce, you will not have a missing link. You will actually have a connected link to an agro-processor.
Okay, so
right?
I want you to think about this. We have virtually about 3 minutes left. I have a short video. I took it courtesy China Global Television Network, CGTN, and it is talking about how they are using innovation technology to make farming attractive and lucrative. While you are going to watch this, I want you to think about one district, one factory, one village, one dam, planting for food and jobs, and find out whether the model is just wrong or whether we can get to where these Chinese have gotten to.
Nice to see you. I'm in Hezi town. I'm in a business operation center. You can see that those women behind me, they are packaging the harvest. In Jiangxi, it has been very hot over the past few days, and they are packaging the potato, and then in the afternoon, big trucks will come, and that will bring the potato to other places of the country. And traditionally, it can only be sold in the head of the county, but right now it can be sold to all different places in China. So now let's take a look how they did it. And this is the Smart Logistic and Operation Center. You can see that we have many different types of cables, and they are actually robots. And these robots, they are able to transport those agricultural products in the air to different places. And right now in Hezi town, we have 6 villages that are equipped with those cable cars. And don't underestimate them. And they can travel at a speed of 25 kilometers per hour, and they can carry more than 20 kilos of potatoes. And some of them are fully sealed and some are half sealed. You can put a duck, you can put some other type of food in the box, and it's smart. You can see that beside me I have one staff that is operating on the computer, and he's able to control those robots to transit in between different places. And he can also measure the operating status of the cable car. And with this system, we are able to solve the last mile problem of food transportation. You know that traditionally, if you want to sell your fruits, you can only sell as a small farmer. You can only sell a small quantity. But right now, we have those cable cars, and you can simply bring the potato to this logistics center and then put them in this box, and that will be able to transport the cable to directly a very large logistics center. And if you place an order from your phone, the product will be delivered to your doorsteps. And we are scaling up this initiative to the whole county. And truly, this is combining modern technology with traditional agriculture.
So that is China. People say Chinese are daredevils, and they use their brains to do a lot of things. In Ghana, we talk about tomato glut, whatever glut, whatever glut, whatever glut. And we know our farm tracks are not existent. And so many times our farmers produce, they lose their crops, the banks chase them, there's no insurance, and it is not attractive. Our time is up. But after watching this video, and I made reference to some models already in place, are they right? Are they wrong? In a short form, can we get to where these Chinese are?
And I like the point you make. Can we get to that point? because this is a very sophisticated aspect of
farming,
of a route to market system.
And the video you saw was actually one typical village in China.
Yes.
And farming.
Yeah. But it boils down to routes to market. What I would say is that we have done Planting for Food and Jobs. We have done 1D, 1F. But one of the things that I talked about this afternoon is that you cannot locate programs and projects in isolation and in disjoint. Because if you're going to do those two programs, then you must make sure that there is a linkage, and I'm going to keep saying this, there's a linkage between the planting that becomes produce and the manufacturing that is happening in the districts. There must be a clear linkage. We don't have that clear linkage. The second issue is markets. Markets mean roads, bottom line. If you're going to take produce to markets, you need roads. We are still lacking the good quality. If you go into the rural areas, we are still lacking good quality electricity. We're lacking access to water in many, many rural communities. So the manufacturing base that we want has to also, and the farming base that we want to create, must also be supported with the right sort of socioeconomic infrastructure, which we simply are not delivering in the right way. I talked about the commitment that we made to spend 10% of our budget allocation on agriculture. That is the answer. If you devote the money, you will get the results. China has devoted the money, they have the results. The question is, are we willing to spend 10% of our budgetary allocation on turning agriculture around? And if I'm a farmer, I will make a demand on the government that come 2022, you must spend that 10% that you promised. That you promised because it was the right thing to do. Or I will never believe you that you care about agriculture.
Thank you very much. Mr. Michael Harry-Yamson is an agronomist, a fellow of think tank Solidaire Governance Forum. Today he delivered a lecture, one of the maiden ones, Remodeling Financing for Agribusiness and Agro-Processing, Reviving Rural Economies in Ghana. You remember just recently we had the avian flu, and I knew that government has released money to help address it. And if you know the number of pickups we have bought, the number of things we have bought with the money just for logistics, and the farmer is sitting there, you can only reflect on how best we can do. I know, and if you check the records, as far back as 2003, African heads of state pledged that they were going to devote 10%, as he said, of their budgets and sustain it over the years to boost the agri sector. We have never done that sustainably. We'll leave it here. 2022 budget will be presented next week. Let's pray that government will make another commitment towards boosting the agricultural sector. Otherwise, all what is being done is just another waste of hard to come by public resources in the form of loans that your children will pay tomorrow. My name is Eric Ahianyo. Let's meet next week and do another edition of Ideas Exchange on TV XYZ. Thanks to our sponsors X Natural Mineral Water, and of course to all my producers, Abuaji and Co, the people behind the cameras. I want to say thank you, and let's meet again.